The sun had just begun to rise over the rolling hills of Montana, casting a golden hue over the endless fields of wheat. A light breeze stirred the morning fog as birds chirped from the fences lining a long dirt road. Kevin Costner stepped out onto the porch of his farmhouse, a cup of black coffee in hand. His movements were calm, almost meditative, as he took in the serenity of his land. To anyone watching, he was just another retired man living out his final years in peace. But Kevin wasn't just a Hollywood legend who had stepped out of the limelight. Beneath the weathered denim shirt and the calm expression was a different man, one shaped by shadows, missions that never made headlines, and a life spent in silence before the cameras ever rolled. Long before he was known on screen, he was trained to disappear, to fight and to survive. A soft ding echoed from his phone inside the house. He didn't hurry, he never did. But when he picked it up, the message on the screen chilled the quiet morning air. "They're coming, and they don't know who you are." Kevin didn't flinch. He put the cup down slowly and looked out toward the tree line. The wind carried something strange that morning, something familiar. To those who would come for him, he was just a name, a soft target, a job. They had no idea they were walking into a war zone. The morning air was crisp, the kind that kissed your skin and made your breath visible. Kevin walked the worn path toward the stables, his boots pressing softly into the dew-covered grass. His ranch stretched far in every direction, hundreds of acres of peace he had bought with a different kind of currency, years of secrets, missions buried under redacted files, and memories he never spoke of. At 63, Kevin looked like any other rancher. His face weathered but strong, his eyes a little tired but always scanning, always calculating. He moved like a man who knew where every shadow fell. Beside him trotted Blue, his old shepherd mix, tail wagging, tongue out, unaware of the shift in the wind. Inside the barn, Maya was already awake. 17, full of energy and fire. She was his daughter by heart, not by blood. He had adopted her after a rescue op years ago in Honduras, a girl left with nothing but rage and a will to survive. She'd grown into a sharp, clever young woman with a deep love for horses and an uncanny ability to read people. Today, she brushed down Copper, her chestnut mare. "Morning, Dad," she said, without looking up. "Something's different." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Can't say. Just quiet. Too quiet." Kevin smiled faintly. Maya had instincts. Good ones. They finished feeding the animals, walking the paddock together. The sun was rising now, revealing more of the wide-open sky and the jagged edges of the tree line beyond the fields. Kevin paused, his gaze locking on a distant speck in the sky, too small for a bird, moving too steadily for a plane. A drone. He squinted. Civilian drones didn't move like that. This one had precision, hovering deliberately, scanning. Kevin's jaw tightened. Without a word, he stepped back into the barn, opened an old wooden chest tucked behind hay bales, and pulled out a matte black rifle with a modified scope. Maya stopped brushing, eyes wide. "You're not serious," she said. Kevin didn't answer. He knelt, steadied the rifle on the stable wall, calculated wind speed and fired. The drone exploded mid-air, a silent pop followed by a thin trail of smoke falling toward the forest. Maya stared. That was overkill. "No such thing," Kevin muttered, already putting the rifle away. "Get inside. Now." She followed him back to the house, questions on her lips but silenced by the gravity in his eyes. Inside, Kevin locked the doors, lowered the blinds, and opened a steel cabinet hidden behind the pantry. Inside were things Maya had never seen before. Tactical gear, maps, encrypted radios, and a weathered notebook with strange symbols. "I thought you said that life was over," she whispered. Kevin looked at her. "I said I hoped it was." He powered up an old tablet and tapped into a private satellite feed. Static flashed, then a heat map of his property appeared. 2 signals moving at the edge of the forest. Watching, waiting. He tapped a secure line, 1 ring, 2. A gravelly voice answered. "You ever call me this early again, They're coming." A pause. "How many?" "Too early to tell, But they've got recon in place, military-grade drones. Who the hell did you piss off this time? Kevin didn't respond. He didn't need to. The past had finally found him. After hanging up, he turned to Maya. Pack a go bag, light, essentials only. Maya hesitated, then nodded. She'd seen that look before, the look that meant no arguments. She disappeared upstairs while Kevin walked back outside, scanning the horizon again. From behind him, Jake approached, his nearest neighbor, ex-Marine, now part-time mechanic and full-time skeptic. He was wiping grease off his hands with a rag. You fire off that shot just to scare the crows, or are we in trouble? Kevin didn't smile. We might have company. Jake looked up at the smoke still curling in the sky. Damn, should I get the rifles? Not yet, Kevin said, his eyes narrowing. Let's see if they knock first. But deep down, he knew no one was going to knock. Hundreds of miles away under the sweltering sun of Nevada, a different kind of silence filled the air. Clinical, calculated. Inside a remote bunker buried beneath a decommissioned airfield, Marcus Vole stood in front of a holographic map, hands clasped behind his back. He studied the terrain of Costner's ranch as though preparing for a surgical procedure. Vole was in his early 50s, German-born, ex-KSK, and a ghost in every intelligence file that mattered. Tall, lean, and surgical in both speech and violence. His eyes were icy, calculating, and beneath the calm exterior was a mind conditioned for war. Around him sat his team, each a specialist, each chosen for ruthlessness and reliability. Rico sat on a crate near the door, cleaning the wires of a C4 block with loving care. Puerto Rican, sharp-tongued and addicted to explosions. Every mission he took part in ended with fire. So this guy's just a farmer? He asked without looking up. No, Vole replied. He's something else. We don't have a full profile. Files were wiped or sealed. That tells me two things. Someone powerful wants him gone, and he's not supposed to be taken lightly. Across the room, Lena adjusted the sights on her rifle. Her long blonde hair was tied back into a tight braid. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. A former Finnish sniper turned mercenary, Lena's kill count was whispered about in circles where that number actually meant something. A fourth mercenary, Thomas, the communications expert, projected the satellite feed Kevin had just accessed. He spotted the drone, took it down with a scoped shot from over 400 meters. That's not some backwoods rancher. That's training. Vole turned away from the projection and looked at them one by one. We proceed with caution. Primary objective is recovery. Secondary is asset disposal. No noise, no bodies, in and out. Rico smirked. You mean try not to blow things up? Vole didn't blink. I mean don't. We're not leaving a trace. This job is off book. He reached into a metal case and pulled out a black dossier marked with a red stamp. Classified. Inside were aerial images of the ranch, Kevin's last known civilian photo, and schematics of old underground structures buried beneath the land. Lena leaned closer. This farm, it's covering something. Exactly, Vole said. That's why we're going. Not for the man. For what's underneath? No one asked further questions. In their world, information flowed downward like blood on marble. Vole gave orders, they followed. That was the nature of this crew. They weren't a unit, they were a weapon. By nightfall, they were airborne. A blacked-out chopper sliced through the dark skies, skimming treetops to avoid radar. Inside, the mood was tense, but controlled. Everyone checked gear, loaded mags, calibrated thermal optics. Vole stared ahead, silent. He knew Costner was dangerous. Men like him didn't just retire. They hid. And they only hid if they had something to lose or something to protect. The chopper touched down 20 miles outside Kevin's land. The team moved out in pairs, traversing the rough terrain like phantoms. Vole's orders were clear. Set perimeter surveillance. Find the access point to the underground chamber, retrieve the package, and erase all evidence. Meanwhile, back on the ranch, Kevin stood on his porch, watching the stars. He knew they were on the move now. He could feel it in his bones, the same way he used to feel it in hostile territory. The subtle shift in air, the crawling sensation down the spine, the breath before the trigger pull. Inside, Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, assembling gear Kevin had laid out for her. Light armor, a combat knife, and a modified short-range comm. She looked up. "Do you know them?" Kevin didn't look away from the tree line. "No, but I know their type, and they don't knock." Down the hill, Jake worked silently in his shed, oiling a vintage shotgun. No one had to be told what to do. The silence of the land had changed, and something far worse than wolves was coming through the forest. The night crept in slowly over the Montana hills, swallowing the last rays of sunlight in a sea of navy blue. The stars shimmered above like watchful eyes, cold and distant. But Kevin Costner wasn't looking up. He was kneeling beside a low fence at the edge of his property, inspecting fresh prints in the dirt. Boot treads, too uniform, too deliberate. They were close now. He stood scanning the darkness with a small thermal monocular. Two faint heat signatures blinked at the edge of the forest, just beyond the property line, watching, testing. Behind him, Maya approached quietly, holding a black case. "I finished packing the gear." Kevin took the case, flipped it open, and pulled out a small unmarked drone of his own, one he hadn't used in years. With practiced fingers, he powered it up, launched it silently into the night and guided it through the trees. On the screen, faint outlines of movement appeared. 4 figures, spaced with tactical precision, moving like professionals. They weren't just armed, they were trained. 4 now. More will come, Kevin muttered, almost to himself. Maya leaned closer to the screen. "Why are they here, Dad?" "Is this about you?" Kevin exhaled through his nose. "It's never about me. It's about what they think I'm hiding." Inside the house, Jake finished installing reinforced steel bars on the lower windows. Sweat ran down his brow despite the chill. "This place is gonna hold," he said as Kevin walked in. "No, it won't," Kevin replied flatly. "They're not coming through the front door." He opened an old cabinet beneath the staircase and pulled out 3 claymore mines, dusty but functional. Maya raised her eyebrows. "You've had those in the house this whole time?" Kevin nodded. "Had to keep the mice out." Jake chuckled dryly, but the tension was thickening. They all felt it. Meanwhile, in the forest beyond the hills, Vole and his crew set up their forward position. Lena perched in a tree with her sniper rifle, scanning the landscape with night vision optics. Rico planted sensors along the perimeter. Tomas hacked into local cell towers to cut off all outgoing signals. No calls, no warnings. Kevin was on his own. At 2:47 a.m., Rico made the first move. He crept through the eastern fence line and approached the barn, his steps featherlight. He carried a silenced pistol and a scanner device that blinked softly in his hand. The scanner pinged, low levels of radiation. He smirked. Bingo. Inside the barn, copper neighed loudly. Rico froze, glancing up, and saw a red laser flicker across his chest. He dove to the side just as a claymore mine hidden in the hay exploded, sending a shockwave of heat and shrapnel ripping through the barn's side. At the house, Kevin didn't blink. He had been watching everything through his drone's live feed. "First blood," Jake muttered, gripping his shotgun. Maya stood by the radio, her hands trembling slightly. "They'll come harder now." "They will," Kevin said. "And we'll be ready." In the woods, Vole knelt beside Rico, who lay bleeding from a gash on his shoulder, ears ringing. The rest of the team regrouped. "That was a warning," Lena said coldly. Vole nodded. "He's not just defending. He's hunting." Back in the house, Kevin sat down at the kitchen table and opened a thick, leather-bound notebook, pages filled with sketches of the property, combat layouts, supply lists, and encrypted notes from years ago. He flipped to a dog-eared page labeled Phase 2 Red Zone Activation. Maya leaned over his shoulder. "You really planned for this?" Kevin looked at her with calm intensity. "You don't live this long by being surprised." Outside, the fire from the exploded barn still smoldered, casting flickering shadows across the fields. Somewhere in that darkness, men were regrouping, recalculating, and preparing to make their next move. Kevin closed the notebook. "It begins now." The fire from the barn cast a low orange glow across the land, but inside the farmhouse the light was dim, controlled. Kevin stood at the window, arms crossed, watching as the flames flickered against the darkness. His jaw was clenched, his body still as stone. Behind him, Maya paced slowly, her footsteps soft but restless. "Why don't we just leave?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Take the truck, disappear." Kevin didn't turn. "Because running doesn't fix this. It follows. It always follows." She stopped. "But this isn't your war anymore." Kevin finally looked at her, his voice quiet but sharp. "That's what I told myself when I bought this land, that I was done. That I could bury the soldier in the ground and grow something new on top of him." He looked back toward the fire. "But some ghosts don't stay buried." He moved to a steel locker bolted into the floor beneath the pantry. With a key worn smooth from use, he opened it and pulled out a black duffel bag. Inside was his past: a matte gray combat vest custom made, a tactical sidearm, an old ID badge from an organization whose name was redacted, and a knife with his initials etched into the handle. He began to suit up. Upstairs, Jake had just finished stitching his own shoulder. He'd taken a piece of shrapnel, helping Kevin set another trap near the north side. Gritting his teeth, he tied off the bandage and headed downstairs. "You really going full gear?" Jake asked, eyeing the vest. Kevin nodded. "They're not amateurs." Jake grabbed a combat shotgun from the weapons rack and tossed a handful of shells into his pocket. "Well, neither are we." Maya sat at the kitchen table, watching the transformation. Her father had always seemed larger than life, but now he looked like something out of a classified file, like someone who had been forged in places the world didn't talk about. She opened a drawer and pulled out the handheld radio Kevin had given her. "So what's the plan?" Kevin laid out a map of the property. "They're looking for something under this land, something buried deep. There's an old military shelter from the Cold War era underneath the Western Ridge. I didn't even know about it until after I bought the place, but someone wants what's in there. And they'll kill us to get it," Jake added. Kevin nodded. "They already tried." He marked several red X's on the map: traps, weak points, fallback positions. "They think I'm going to protect the house." "That's what I'd think too. But we're going to let them come in just far enough." He pointed at the main barn, now partially destroyed. "That was just noise. They'll expect more of the same. But we're going to funnel them toward the creek bed, where the terrain forces them to tighten formation." Jake leaned in, "And that's where we hit them." Kevin's voice was steady, hard, fast, and without mercy. There was a pause. Then Maya said quietly, "Do you really think we'll survive this?" Kevin's eyes met hers. "I don't plan to survive. I plan to win. That's different." Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, long and low. Kevin stood and looked down the hallway toward the living room. The photos of his life were still hanging there. Hollywood premieres, award nights, smiling faces, peaceful days. But now he saw them differently, not as memories, but as motives. He turned back to Jake and Maya. "We move in 10. Load everything light. Radio's on. No mistakes." Maya took a breath, steadying herself. "Guess it's in the blood, huh?" Kevin offered a faint, knowing smile. "No. It's in the training." They moved quickly, quietly, each falling into the rhythm of preparation as if they'd done it 1,000 times. In some ways, they had. In dreams, in instincts, in the parts of themselves they'd locked away, until now. And as Kevin stepped out into the night, gear secured, weapon ready, the soldier he had buried was no longer buried at all. He was walking again. By dawn, the fire from the barn had died out, leaving behind scorched wood and the blackened outline of a once peaceful structure. Smoke rose like ghosts into the pale morning sky as Kevin, Jake, and Maya patrolled the perimeter. The traps had been reset, fallback zones established. Every breath felt heavier. The quiet wasn't peace anymore. It was pressure. Kevin crouched near the creek bed, checking one of the concealed motion sensors. The screen blinked twice. Active. Everything was ready. But something still gnawed at him. "This isn't their full force," he muttered to himself. Jake approached, limping slightly. "What?" "They're holding back, observing. They're waiting for something, or someone. Jake looked around warily. Maybe reinforcements. Kevin didn't answer. His instincts whispered truths he couldn't ignore. The enemy was experienced, calculated, and if they were delaying, it meant they were expecting a shift. That shift came an hour later. The low hum of rotor blades grew louder in the sky. Kevin and Jake spun around, weapons raised. A black helicopter, smaller than a military transport but larger than a news chopper, descended from the southern ridge. No markings, no identification. It hovered for a moment, kicking up dust and debris, then landed on the open field near the edge of the pasture. Maya stood by the front porch, shielding her eyes as the wind whipped her hair. "Friends of yours?" "Depends on who steps out," Kevin replied, already moving. The side door of the chopper hissed open. A tall woman in tactical gear jumped down, helmet under her arm, her gray-streaked hair pulled back tight. Her expression was sharp, unreadable, but her presence carried weight. "Sloan," Kevin said, surprised. She gave a half smile. "Heard you were throwing a party." "Figured I'd drop in." Jake blinked. "You know her?" "Sloan's ex-Ghost Recon. We worked Black Ops in Eastern Europe. She vanished off the grid a decade ago." Kevin paused. "Now I know where she went." Sloan looked around, assessing the land. "Nice spread. Bit flammable, though." "What are you doing here?" She shrugged. "Got a whisper from an old contact. Said your name lit up a few channels it shouldn't have. Figured that meant trouble." "You alone?" Kevin asked. "Always," she said. "Cleaner that way." Jake frowned. "We don't even know if we can trust her." Kevin looked her in the eyes for a long beat. "If she wanted us dead, she would have brought hell, not a helicopter." Maya stepped forward. "Can she fight?" Sloan cracked her neck and pulled a compact SMG from her thigh holster. "Kid, I don't fight, I end things." The uneasy alliance was forged in silence. No handshakes, no oaths, just shared glances between people who understood what it meant to live on the edge. Sloan joined the strategy session, bringing intel Kevin didn't have. Thermal images from satellite scans, intercepted radio chatter, and the most chilling detail. The group coming for him wasn't mercs for hire. They were a ghost unit, unlisted, off-book, answering to no flag. The kind of team you sent to erase someone permanently. "They're not after you," Sloan said, tapping the map. "They're after this." She pointed to the underground shelter beneath the western ridge. "They believe it holds a Cold War archive, intel on experimental tech, failed weapons programs, and worse, leverage material. The kind of secrets governments kill to keep buried." Jake whistled low. "And you built your chicken coop on top of it." Kevin stared at the map, jaw tight. "I didn't know when I bought the land." Sloan locked eyes with him. "They don't care, and they're getting desperate." They had only a few hours until sunset, and they used every minute. Sloan and Kevin moved in perfect rhythm, old muscle memory returning. Maya trained with Jake, learning how to reload, to breathe under pressure, to trust her body. As the sky darkened again, Kevin stood on the ridge, rifle slung across his shoulder. Sloan joined him, handing him a flask. "Still whiskey?" He nodded, took a sip, then handed it back. "Still hell." They didn't speak for a while. Then Sloan asked, "You ready to finish this?" Kevin stared at the horizon, where the shadows began to move again. "Yeah," he said. "But this time, we finish it our way." The sky bled orange as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the ranch. A heavy silence blanketed the land, broken only by the distant chirp of crickets and the soft metallic clicks of final weapon checks. Kevin stood in the tool shed, staring at an old photo nailed to the wall. Him, Sloan, and two other operatives in desert gear, faces dirt-streaked but smiling. Only two of them were still alive. He turned, zipped his vest, and stepped into the dying light. Across the property, Sloan finished installing thermal tripwires near the southern fence. She moved like she had done it 1,000 times, which she had. Jake, still favoring his injured shoulder, adjusted the motion-activated spotlight rigged to a car battery. Inside the house, Maya sat on the floor with a small combat med kit. She had memorized the procedures, practiced the compressions, even stitched a grapefruit for training. But tonight, It might not be fruit she'd be sewing shut. Kevin walked in and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You good?" She looked up. "No, but I'm ready." That was enough. Then the attack began. It started with silence. No war cry, no gunfire, just the faint click of a pressure plate behind the barn, too far to hit anything vital but close enough to trigger a response. Kevin's eyes narrowed. "They're testing us again." Before he could finish the thought, two sharp cracks echoed from the ridge. Sniper rounds. One hit the side of the house, the other struck the generator behind the garage, exploding it in a flash of sparks. The ranch plunged into darkness. Lena, perched a mile away with her custom scope, smiled. "Lights out!" Inside the chaos, Kevin barked orders. "Jake, north flank." "Maya, stay low, Sloan with me." But as they sprinted toward the barn, a figure appeared from the shadows. It was Thomas, but something was off. He was limping, hands raised. "Wait, I'm not with them anymore," Kevin aimed. "Try again." "They sent me in first, said I'd be backup, but they left me. They used me." Sloan moved beside Kevin. "It's a trick." Thomas dropped to his knees. "I have info. You're walking into a trap inside your own defenses. Rico planted a charge near the creek bed. It'll kill all of you when you try to push back." Kevin held his aim, his mind racing. Sloan scowled. "We shoot him now. We're safe." Maya's voice called from behind. "Wait, let him talk." Kevin lowered his weapon slightly. "You get one chance." Tomas quickly detailed the explosives' location and the new attack pattern. They were preparing to flank from the ridge while using the creek bed as a killing zone. It all matched Kevin's suspicions. Still, Sloan wasn't convinced. "I don't buy it," she said. "Men like him don't flip." Kevin looked Tomas in the eye. "Why help us?" Tomas swallowed hard. "Because I thought this was just another op, not a slaughter. You've got a kid. You're not a target. You're a loose end." There was a long silence. Then Kevin nodded once. Tie him. Watch him. But the decision cost them. Just as Sloan turned her back, a flash of movement. A sniper's round pierced her chest. She stumbled back, blood blooming across her tactical vest. "Sloan!" Kevin dropped beside her, hands pressing into the wound. She coughed, eyes wide. "It's clean, through the lung." Jake pulled her into cover as Maya rushed in with the medkit. Her hands shook, but moved fast, sealing the wound, applying pressure. "We need to evac her," Maya shouted. "No time," Kevin said, jaw clenched. "They're coming." Sloan grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't stop, you finish this, Kev, you hear me?" He nodded once, swallowing hard. She faded into unconsciousness. Outside, the wind carried voices, foreign accents, tactical codes, boots crunching dirt. Kevin stood, rage cooling into purpose. "They took Sloan," he said, turning to Jake and Maya. "Now we take everything from them." In the dark, the hunter was ready to strike. The house smelled like gunpowder and blood. Sloan lay unconscious on the dining table, wrapped in gauze, her breathing shallow but steady. Maya sat by her side, gripping her hand tightly, whispering things too soft to hear. Outside, the night had grown colder. The enemy was closer now. Kevin could feel it in his bones. He stood in the living room, staring at the wall covered in maps, markers, and hastily scribbled strategies. Jake was reloading beside him, moving slower now, the pain in his shoulder catching up. "We can't take another hit like that," Jake muttered. "We're down one. They've got tech, numbers, night vision." Kevin cut him off. "We still have home field." Jake shook his head. "They're bleeding us out." Kevin walked to a nearby drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a faded patch, his old unit insignia, a dagger over a coiled serpent. He stared at it for a long moment, then pinned it to the strap of his vest. Jake noticed. "You're really going full ghost, huh?" Kevin looked at him, eyes cold. "They made this personal. Now I make it surgical." He called Maya over. "I need you to stay here, guard Sloan. If things go south, you get her to the tunnel and keep moving." Maya frowned. "You're not planning on coming back, are you?" Kevin didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a folded note. "If I don't make it, this tells you everything about me, about what's buried here. And about why they came." She nodded, eyes shimmering. Jake stepped up. So what's the move? Kevin unfolded the map again and pointed to the ridge overlooking the creek bed. They've fortified here. That's their command node. Rico set up charges to block escape. But if we go around through the dry gulch, we can flank them. Hit hard, fast. 2 of us against what, 6, 8? Jake asked. 2 of us who know this land against 6 men walking blind in the dark. Jake sighed. Hell, I've done worse for worse people. They moved out under a moonless sky, navigating through the narrow gulch that curved behind the enemy's position. Kevin moved silently, every step placed with precision. Jake followed, slower, breathing heavier but determined. They passed a rusted-out tractor and a collapsed fence. Old markers Kevin remembered from his first year on the land. As they neared the edge of the enemy encampment, the red glow of thermal scopes shimmered through the branches. Kevin signaled stop, crouched and counted. 5 figures, gear heavy, clustered around portable monitors and crates. At the center stood Rico, laughing to himself as he tinkered with a claymore, singing off-key in Spanish. Kevin whispered, I'll take left. You go wide. Jake grinned. Let's make some noise. They moved like shadows. Kevin struck first, slipping behind the farthest man and dropping him silently with a blade to the neck. Jake fired a quick burst from his shotgun, scattering the others. Chaos erupted. Rico spun, shouting orders in Spanish, grabbing for his detonator, but Kevin was already there. He tackled him hard, slamming them both to the ground. The detonator skidded across the dirt. They rolled, fists flying, boots kicking. Rico was strong but sloppy. Kevin was pure economy, every strike calculated. Finally, Kevin pinned him, his blade pressed to Rico's throat. Rico spat blood and laughed. You think this ends with me? Kevin's voice was calm. No, but it starts here. And then he drove the knife home. The others fled into the woods, scattered and disoriented. Jake limped toward Kevin, one hand on his side. Think that was loud enough? Kevin stood, blood dripping from his hands. They'll hear it. He picked up the detonator and tossed it to Jake. Let's turn their traps against them. Back at the house, Maya heard the distant explosions. She looked toward the hills, heart pounding. She didn't know if it meant victory or if she'd just heard the final stand of the 2 men she trusted most. The sun hadn't yet risen, but a faint gray had begun to peel back the darkness. Smoke drifted across the fields, curling above shattered trees and scorched grass. Kevin and Jake stood among the wreckage of the enemy's outpost, surrounded by silence and the acrid stench of burnt plastic and cordite. Jake dropped into a crouch, breathing hard. That was a damn mess. Kevin didn't respond. He stared at a crate that had been hidden beneath camo netting. Military issue, old markings barely visible. He knelt, pried it open, and inside found a metal container bearing the insignia of a defunct agency, one that had supposedly shut down 20 years ago. He opened it. Inside, nestled in foam, was a black drive and a sealed manila folder marked Eyes Only. Jake leaned over his shoulder. That it? Kevin nodded. What they were after. Classified data, probably a kill list. Names, operations, leverage material. Enough to burn half of DC to the ground. He stared at the folder a moment longer, then tucked it into his vest. We're not giving this to anyone, he said. Jake chuckled bitterly, not even surprised. A crackling noise buzzed in Kevin's earpiece. Maya's voice. Dad, there's someone here. Kevin froze. Who? She didn't answer right away then. A woman, she's armed, alone. Kevin's blood ran cold. Stay with Sloan. I'm on my way. He and Jake moved fast, cutting through the side paths, avoiding the fire-scorched main trail. As they neared the farmhouse, Kevin saw the woman standing by the porch. Lena. Her sniper rifle was slung across her back. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't aiming. She was waiting. Kevin stepped into view, weapon raised. You're either brave or suicidal. She didn't flinch. Neither. Just done. Jake emerged beside him, grimacing. You don't get to play the victim after killing Sloan. Lena's eyes flicked to him. I didn't shoot Sloan. Kevin stiffened. What? She took a slow step forward. It was Vol. He took the shot. I wanted you alive. Kevin narrowed his eyes. Why? Lena took a breath. Because I didn't come here for the file. I came for you. Silence. She continued. Years ago in Kandahar, you led an op that killed my father. He was a warlord, a killer, sure. But to me, he was just my father. I spent years tracking every name connected to that mission. Jake raised his gun. So this is revenge? No, Lena said quietly. It was, until I saw what Vol was really planning. She reached into her vest, slowly, and pulled out a small drive. This is his contingency, a list of targets he was going to eliminate once he secured the archive, including your daughter. Kevin stepped forward, took the drive, and checked the data. She was telling the truth. You're switching sides now? He asked, still skeptical. I'm not on anyone's side, she replied, but I'm tired of being a tool for men like him. Kevin glanced toward the house. Maya stood in the doorway, holding Sloane's rifle. She'd been listening the whole time. She's telling the truth, Maya said softly. I've been watching her hands, her posture. She didn't come to fight. Jake scoffed. What now, Kev? Invite her in for pancakes. Kevin studied Lena for a long moment, then turned back to the house. We're not done yet, he said. He walked inside and laid both drives on the table beside Sloane's unconscious form. This is why they came, he said, mostly to himself. This is why they won't stop. Jake sat down hard. Then we make sure this ends. Lena entered last, cautiously. She looked at Sloane, eyes softening for the first time. She's strong, she'll live. Kevin nodded. If she does, we owe her everything. Outside, the sky had shifted from grey to the first pale hues of dawn. But the final battle hadn't been fought yet. Because Marcus Vol was still out there and he didn't run. He waited. Kevin picked up his rifle and slung it over his shoulder. The board's set, he said. Now we end the game. The morning light had barely broken when Kevin moved out, his figure cutting a silent path through the tall grass behind the western ridge. He wore his combat vest like a second skin, face painted in streaks of ash and mud, rifle slung but ready. Jake flanked him from the left, grim but focused, while Lena moved up high on the right, weaving between the trees with practiced grace. This wasn't defense anymore. This was assault. They knew where Vol was hiding, an old ranger outpost just outside the property line, forgotten by most, but perfect for a temporary command center. It sat tucked between rock walls and dense pines, giving him a clear view of every approach. Kevin had once called it the Watchtower. Now it was Vol's last stand. The trio advanced in silence, communicating only with hand signals. At the base of the hill, Kevin raised his fist, halting the team. He pointed ahead, 2 armed guards, gear similar to Rico's, patrolling near the cabin's outer perimeter. Lena slipped away without a word. 30 seconds later, 2 soft thuds. No more guards. Jake muttered, "She's efficient, I'll give her that." Kevin didn't reply. His eyes were on the door. He crept forward, heart steady, breath even. The wooden steps creaked slightly under his boots, but he moved fast. Too fast for anyone inside to react. He kicked the door open. A flashbang arced toward him. Kevin dropped instantly, eyes squeezed shut. Boom! The cabin erupted in white light and thunder. Jake dove behind a rock. Lena fired a cover shot through the window as Kevin rolled inside, blinking away the blur just in time to see Vol rising from behind a desk, pistol in hand. Kevin Costner, Vol said with a twisted smile. The actor turned farmer turned problem. Kevin didn't speak. He fired. Vol dove, the round grazing his shoulder. Papers scattered, a map of the ranch curling in the blast of wind from the open door. "You're better than I expected," Vol muttered, crawling to cover behind an overturned table. Kevin moved in, tactical and relentless, sweeping the room. He wasn't playing for time, he was ending this. Vol popped up and fired twice. One round hit Kevin's vest, the other missed wide. Kevin returned fire, forcing him back again. Outside, Jake and Lena engaged with 2 more operatives trying to retreat from the ridge. Jake was hit in the leg but stayed upright, delivering a precise shot to one of the men's chest. Lena downed the other with a clean double tap before turning back toward the cabin. Inside, Kevin and Vol collided in the narrow hallway. The guns dropped. Now it was fists, elbows, knees. Brutal, close, unforgiving. Vol grabbed a shard of broken wood and drove it toward Kevin's neck. Kevin blocked with his forearm, head-butted him, then slammed Vol against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. "Why the file?" Kevin growled. "What's so important that you'd send a kill team for it?" Vol laughed, bloody and defiant. "Because it proves everything. Your government made monsters, and I was one of them. But you were the worst kind, one who walked away." Kevin's eyes narrowed. "No, I was the kind who learned when to stop." He delivered a blow to Vol's ribs, then swept his legs, sending him crashing to the ground. Kevin stood over him, breath ragged. Vol, coughing, spat blood. "You think killing me changes anything?" Kevin leveled his sidearm. "No, but it stops you." He fired. One shot. Vol's body slumped, still. Kevin didn't move for a long moment. Outside, Lena stepped into the doorway. Her face was unreadable. "It's done?" Kevin looked at her, then at Vol's body. "Almost." He moved to the desk, retrieved the comms unit still active on the channel. "Listen carefully," he said into the mic. "Whoever's left, run. You come back here again, you won't get a second warning." He smashed the unit with the butt of his rifle. Jake limped in, blood trailing down his leg. "Please tell me we're done chasing ghosts." Kevin helped him sit. "Not ghosts. Just men pretending they couldn't be killed." The dust inside the cabin was still settling when Kevin stepped back into the sunlight, his face lined with dirt and sweat, but his eyes sharp. Vol was dead. The threat for now had been silenced. Jake leaned against a tree nearby, leg wrapped with a torn shirt, breathing steadily despite the pain. Lena stayed a few paces back, her rifle slung, her gaze fixed on the horizon. It felt like victory, but Kevin knew better. He always had. As they walked back toward the ranch, the air grew heavier, charged with something he couldn't name. The birds weren't singing. The wind had dropped. Even the trees seemed to stand still, holding their breath. When they reached the house, Maya was on the porch. Her eyes lit up at the sight of them. "You're okay," she breathed, rushing to Kevin's side. He pulled her into a brief, firm hug. "Sloan?" "She's alive, barely, still unconscious." Kevin nodded. "We'll fly her out at first light. I've got a contact. He'll come with a medevac." Jake slumped into a chair, groaning as he sat. "Don't suppose he has coffee, too?" "I'll ask," Kevin said with a smirk. But before he could step inside, Maya froze. "Wait." She turned slowly. Her eyes locked on Lena. Kevin followed her gaze. Lena stood still. Too still. Her eyes were distant, unfocused. Her hand hovered near her belt, not reaching but not resting either. Kevin's voice turned cold. "What is it?" Lena didn't speak. Instead, she held up a small device. Slim, black, blinking red. Jake's eyes widened. "Is that a dead switch?" Kevin growled. Lena looked at him, her voice low. "I didn't want this, but Vol, he was only the front." Kevin's fingers twitched over his sidearm. "Explain." "There's another buyer," she said, swallowing hard. "One Vol didn't even trust. He gave them leverage, me, insurance. This device. If I don't report in by sunrise, they'll trigger an orbital ping." Kevin's face hardened. "What kind of ping?" "Targeting," she said. "Your ranch, your home. They think the archive is still here, and they're willing to burn it rather than let you keep it." Maya gasped. "They'll bomb us." Lena nodded. "Drone strike, clean, deniable, silent." Jake gritted his teeth. "You walked in here knowing that?" "I came to warn you," Lena snapped. "I came to stop it, but it's beyond me now." Kevin stepped closer. "Then how do we stop it?" "There's only one way. I have to report in, let them think I succeeded, that I have the file, and then I disappear." "No," Maya said. "They'll trace you, kill you." Lena smiled faintly. "I've spent my life in shadows. I can vanish again." Kevin studied her. The edge in his eyes never left, but something deeper stirred. Recognition, maybe. A shared understanding of what it meant to be used by forces bigger than you. He held out his hand. The trigger. Lena hesitated, then handed it over. Kevin crushed it under his boot, grinding it into the porch. "That wasn't the real signal," she whispered. "Just my insurance." "The real trigger's on a timer, but now they'll be blind," he nodded. "Then we move." Kevin rushed inside, grabbed the archive, the black drive and the classified folder, and shoved them into a fireproof lockbox. He handed it to Maya. "You take this and run. East Trail, Jake will guide you." "What about you?" she asked. "I'm ending this." Lena stepped up. "Let me help." Kevin stared at her a moment, then nodded. They moved quickly. Kevin activated his emergency beacon, one that pinged an old contact in the intelligence community. It sent a different kind of signal. Asset at risk, immediate retrieval required. 15 minutes later, a military drone, silent, black and fast, appeared in the sky. It hovered overhead. Then a mechanical voice echoed through Kevin's comms. "Confirmed, asset secured, engagement aborted." Kevin exhaled. The strike had been called off. Lena dropped to her knees, shaking. "It's over," she whispered. Kevin looked around. The burned field, the bullet holes, the blood on the porch. "No," he said softly. "It survived." 3 days later, the smoke had cleared, but the scars remained. The barn was gone. The house was damaged but still standing. Sloan had been airlifted to a secure facility and was now stable, though still unconscious. Jake rested in the guest room, leg elevated, a cup of black coffee never far from reach. Maya sat on the back steps, the lockbox beside her. It was still unopened. Kevin stood in the field, watching the sunrise. The land looked different now. Not broken, but changed, baptized by fire. Lena had vanished. She left before dawn with nothing but a backpack and a promise. "If they come again, you'll never see me. But I'll be there." Kevin believed her. He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled. For the first time in days, he wasn't thinking about the next move, just standing still. Maya joined him. "What now?" Kevin looked at her, then at the distant hills. "We rebuild, we protect what matters, and we stay ready." She nodded. "And the archive?" He smiled faintly. "It stays buried. The world's not ready for what's inside." She placed a hand on the lockbox. "And if they come again?" Kevin turned to her, voice low but steady. "Then we remind them this place may look like a farm, but it's never been just soil and fences." Behind them, a faint buzz echoed in the sky, a drone watching from afar, then turning away. The game wasn't over, but for now, they had won. If this story moved you, intrigued you, or made you hold your breath, subscribe for more cinematic tales of courage, legacy, and justice. Because sometimes the quietest places hold the loudest echoes.